Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Second Cup of Coffee. It's Pastor Tom here with you. We're on week 4 of our series called Grit. And over the last 3 weeks, we've talked through what that means and kind of what we're doing. You may recognize the guest that we have with us. She was with us last month. And really, Rachel, when we talked last month, we talked a lot about Cherish, but we talked about the grace end of dealing with people who are trying to kind of establish a beachhead with God in the sense that, look, I did it wrong. I want to do it right. And maybe they have no frame of reference for what that is. And you were very clear and helped us understand, like, look, you have to see as God sees and speak what God speaks. But we really kind of focused on the grace end. I want to focus today on the grit end. And what I mean by that is, what I appreciate about you and Micah is that you're both very prophetic. And prophetic people see things, and then, but what you were telling us off camera is how you speak it. And when you speak it is very, very important because you have to be led by the Spirit is what I heard in all of our conversation. But sometimes that conversation is gritty. Sometimes that isn't like, hey, I see the potential in you and I'm so excited. I'm grateful that you're not who you used to be. That's a wonderful conversation. But sometimes the conversation is, you take 2 more steps, you're going around a corner I can't get you back from. And it's a little different conversation. So can you help us walk through how to effectively, if I can say it this way, be gritty under the Spirit of God to help people come into places of maturity? I know that some of the best conversations I've ever had have been gritty conversations where people called me to where I was supposed to be as opposed to where I was walking. So I don't know if you want to kind of fill in some of those gaps, or it's not a great question, but the question is, I know you've had those conversations. What do they produce? Why do you have to have them? And you can even give us an example, whatever you want to do.
So I think that if we look at those moments, which are challenging moments, before we speak, because I think that there's moments where we have emotion. Emotion isn't necessarily God's leading. We have to always check our motives.
Hold on. You got to hear that. Please, please, please. Emotion isn't always God's leading. Stop the tape, write it down, put it up somewhere. And I mean that sincerely because I need to write that down. Emotion isn't always God's leading. Me telling you what you need to hear right now isn't necessarily Jesus, but it could be. All right, sorry.
So we have to look at ourselves. Before we could be the mouthpiece of God in this situation, what is my motivation? A lot of times when the emotions are going, we're not very good at evaluating that. But if right before you realize that you need to tell your child about themselves, you have a sense that because of their behavior, whatever they're doing, I'm a failure as a parent. That is probably your motivation to tell them about themselves at that moment and not what God's trying to speak through you.
Same thing if you're ministering to somebody.
Exactly. If it's about me, I'm going to look bad, or this person is a waste of time. Whenever we start thinking this person's a waste of time, you're probably not hearing from God. Shall we say that? Yeah. So if you're in emotion, that's not your time to speak. If you're in a sense of failure, inadequacy, feeling overwhelmed, feeling frustrated, then unless you have that clear go-ahead from God, that's not your time.
Is it fair to say that grit is not putting somebody in their place? Grit is helping to bring somebody to a place that God wants them. That's 2 different things.
Yes.
If I'm mad and I'm angry and I'm emotional and I'm frustrated at you and it's reflecting on me, I probably want to put you in your place. That's not God. Grit is having a tough conversation that helps bring somebody to a place. Do you think that's fair?
Yes. And I think prophetically there are moments, and we can say from even our own lives, there are moments that are fork in the road experiences.
Yes, 100%.
And it's like your first step down the road to the left or down to the right doesn't look too different. Yeah. But those 2 directions are going, heaven and hell, even.
Yes,
so
you're right.
Those are dramatic. And I think those are the houses on fire. Like, this is serious. I see, and I think that's where the wisdom of age. Sometimes as we get older, we learn to recognize those moments in people as they're growing because we've seen that before.
Would you say, too, though, sometimes God doesn't even give us that, we just know? like prophetically, like you may, let me say, yes, age and wisdom, you see the fire, but have you ever had an experience where God's like, I need you to speak this, I need you to speak this now, and you're just doing it by faith? Like, okay, God, that sounds a little bit, like I had one, and then I tried to like fluff it up, and God's like, I didn't ask you to fluff it up. I just asked you to speak what you're supposed to speak. So anyway, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to get off course, but.
Let me just tell you something super
Please.
funny. I was at a grocery store one time, and it was just when I was at church on the way, and I was leaning over to get spaghetti sauce. I got a prophetic unction to speak. I turned around to see who God wanted me to speak to. I looked at the man who was passing by, and I said, I just want you to understand something. God sees everything you do.
Oh, wow.
That's all I knew.
Right.
And he was like, what are you saying? What are you saying? You didn't see me? You don't know anything. And he's just screaming and like you're freaking me out right now. Like are you clairvoyant? I know you didn't see me. Well, while I was getting the spaghetti sauce, he was checking me out. And I didn't know this at all, but God did, and he gave me that. So that's a total blind turnaround like moment. But those, I mean, maybe for some people they walk in that level all the time, but for me that's rare.
Because last time you were with us, you talked about relationships. So we're going off of relationship. We're not going off of just
of the blind moments, which can happen.
Yes. Yes.
But for me, I work with broken people, and so people who are broken require a level of tenderness and care. Just like once we've had an injury, that there's a time that you can't do the same kind of sports activities or exercise because of the injury. So you have to use tenderness in that process. So in our ministry, we use extra tenderness, but there are moments. And so we were talking about prophetically in relationship-based ministry, we earn the right to speak into your life.
Okay.
And so I earned that right, not by just being around, but by sacrificing for you. So I have buy-in into your future. I think this is really the role of parents.
Right.
Whatever happens to my kids, that happens to me too, because I'm so invested in their future. So in ministry, when we have that kind of investment in people, we've earned the right to speak into their lives. Doesn't mean that you just go with guns blazing. Yeah. But because your life is connected to my life. Your future matters to me.
Right. So what I call it is relational equity. You have a relational equity. And I know she will caution you with this. We are talking about gritty words because they're necessary sometimes, because that equity is about to, not I'm going to lose my equity, but this person, I know by the Spirit of God, by relationship and also by experience, that if you go this way, this does not end well for you, okay? But if I do this wrong out of my frustration, and I think it bears circling back around because she mentioned it and I appreciated it. If I do this wrong, I can evaporate that relational equity that I have built up because I did it out of my frustration and I did it out of it's reflecting bad on me, as opposed to what you're talking about is continuing in that relationship, but almost like Jesus, we talked about this off camera, he called Peter Satan. They had a lot of relational equity, right? Plus he was the Son of God. I mean, we don't get that kind of equity, sure. But there is that reality in it, Rachel, where those words happen. They have to happen because of the end result. That relational equity, it's built in. Just speak to somebody. They got the built-in relational equity. They know what they need to say, but they're struggling with, do I really want to take that step? And I always lean towards that God requires it of me, because he says, if you see somebody going over the edge, you don't say anything, I'm going to weigh your heart. I'm going to, right? And so my fear can't outweigh my obedience. But can you give them some grace and some hope that you can come out the other side? Yeah. Not just you, but both of you, or whoever it is that you're speaking to.
I really believe in beginning those statements with, my concern for you is. Because I'm concerned for the person on this side of the cliff, but I hurt for the person on the other side of that cliff. So,
that's good.
I think there's something about human foolishness where it's like, oh my gosh, why are you so stupid?
Right.
And why are you so stupid is very unhelpful.
Yeah. Very arrogant, too, if I really think about it.
It's pretty arrogant.
Right.
So it's very unhelpful for the other person. But there's a way that seems right to a man, but that way ends in death. You see it happening sometimes quickly and sometimes in slow motion, and you do want to speak to it because you think about that person on the other side of that cliff having that whole descent down and everything that they worked for gone, and sometimes their lives gone. And that's where you speak into because of your love for the person on the other side of that.
Of the destruction.
Of what?
If it were to happen,
Right.
My love for you is so great that I'm willing to risk the relationship.
Yes.
Risk what I have to say because I don't want to see you go down there, and I want to see this person just move forward.
Right.
Okay.
So you see someone who's on fire for the Lord, and they're getting connected in this relationship. You feel it, you sense it, or you see a married couple, and one member is really becoming close with somebody. You see the danger, you see the cliff, and if you're like, hey, you're living stupidly, which they are.
It's accurate. It's accurate.
to quote another generation, you're cruising for a bruising, right? So,
yeah.
But my concern for you is that you're going to lose your marriage and you're going to lose your family, and it's more precious than anything in the world. I love your family, and I don't know if you see the danger you're in right now, but I love you, and I don't want you to lose something that you can never get back.
Now, I want to finish this segment with some grace from you. You shared a story with us off camera. Can you share that story? Because I think some people they get concerned about their tone. And I'm not saying that you should do it, I think, as often as you can, even toned. You know what I mean? But with authority, I guess. And I don't think people understand how to do it in authority without being offensive. But at the same time, expressing the authority in the sense that this is God's word on this subject without being prideful, right?
Right.
I guess the closest thing I can think of is Jesus in the temple. He's whipping people, throwing tables, and I want to see the clip in heaven because it's hard for me to kind of put it all together. But the reason, if you read, I don't remember which gospel it is right now, Rachel, but it says after that, the weak and the lame and the blind came in and he started to heal them. Right? What she's contending for is, I'm contending against this decision because I want to see the healing on the other side that you're walking towards. And if you make this decision, that is all going to evaporate. So can you tell that story just to end? I think it might give them some grace of really what authority and action based on relational equity really kind of looks like or can look like. In that situation.
And we talked about several, so which one?
Okay, the one where the young lady kept making excuses about not having her kids.
Okay, so there was a mom at Cherish, and she was going through a lot. She had been through an abusive relationship. She was going through some mental health issues, and so she had 2 kids before. She had another child. She was living with her boyfriend, but her kids were at relative's house, and the relatives were not awesome people, and so I kept talking to her like, are your kids with you yet? Have you got? And so she kept saying, I'm getting the apartment ready, or we're moving to another place, or and more time kept passing. And so I told her, she came into the office, we're having a conversation, and so I told her the deadline that was that next week, and I said, on that day, you will have beds for your kids. You will have comforters for your kids. You will have all of the bedding. You will have a dresser for them to put their clothes in. And your kids will be at your place. And I want you to send me a picture of them in their beds, because right now you inadvertently are giving them a message that they don't matter and that your child who's with you is more important than they are. It's not what she was trying to convey. But
right.
This is what's coming across. And she did everything that I said and sent me those pictures. And she did a really beautiful job too, probably for the kids. So when you are, and I told Pastor Tom more of my tone. It was a full mom tone of how I spoke to her. But when you're correcting a person, you could correct right and it still go way wrong. But if you do it in the wrong way, it's almost 100% chance that it's going to go really badly and you're going to destroy the relationship. When you're correcting someone, it's from a place of, I believe in you. That's why I'm telling you this, is because I believe that you can.
Not that I'm calling you stupid because you won't. I believe that you can.
I believe that you can, and I believe that if you listen to my words and do this, this is going to be life-giving to you and your family. So, which is the way that the Lord speaks to us. Now, a lot of times he believes we can do stuff that we don't think we can do, but he gives us those commands and says, do it.
Yeah.
Or there's going to be problems. So...
Guys, I hope this month and then last month, if you didn't catch Rachel last month, please go back. You can find us on our app or on our YouTube channel. Listen to that as well, because I think it helped us round out the grace and the grit. And you need both. Sometimes, as we talked about this month, you need grit in yourself just to make the season, right? And you need grit in other people's lives sometimes when done by love, where you're speaking to who they are in Christ, but just like you need to get here. Like yesterday.
Yes.
That's okay. But like she says, when you deal with broken people, sometimes it's a whole lot more grace than it is grit, but you need both. We love you. God bless you, and we'll talk to you soon.